If history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. That was Rudyard Kipling that said that. If he's right and you want to make your sessions impactful and memorable, include stories. To learn how to do this with impact, stay tuned to this video, which is all about telling great stories. In this video, we're going to explore 7 key elements to include in delivering stories effectively. You'll experience an effective story being told, and we'll give you some tips for delivering effective stories in your sessions. You see, the keys to success in using stories effectively are, number 1, a good story with the right structure. Now, we cover this in another video called Crafting Your Story, so make sure you watch that. And number 2, an effective delivery. That's what we're going to focus on in this video. An effective delivery of a story relies on the storyteller's ability to attract and hold the audience's attention. There are 7 key elements to include for doing that. Let's look at them. Number 1, drama. You need to use your voice and body language to build your characters to create anticipation, interest, and engagement in your listeners. Your voice. Use the volume, pitch, your voice rate to reflect and add meaning and interest to your story. Use pauses and silence to help evoke feelings of hesitation, uncertainty, and fear, but also to highlight an important point in the delivery. Your body language. Use your arms and your legs, and especially your face, to express mood, feelings, and descriptions. Use your stance. When you stand still, it means confidence. When you slouch, it means fear or being tired. Your hand gestures. When they're together, it means similarities or connection. When they're apart, it means opposition or disconnection. Your facial expressions. When you lower your eyelids, it could mean sadness or just tired. Widening eyes means surprise or excitement. And then, of course, a smile is happiness. Okay, element number 2, relevance. Listeners need to be able to identify with the main character or the hero in the story. When they do, they can more easily relate the story to their own personal lives. So bring your characters alive by providing details about their appearance. Help your audience create a mental picture of your characters using multisensory descriptions. For example, for visual, you can say things like red as an apple. For auditory, he sounded like a crying baby. For kinesthetic, roughed leather skin. For olfactory, smell like a fresh new car. For gustatory, sweet as honey. Now, element number 3 is humor. When used at the right time, humor can create an unexpected twist that pleasantly surprises the listeners, and it keeps them engaged. And funny lines or jokes can also help you build rapport with listeners. It'll emphasize points or even convey sensitive points in a light way. However, always make sure they fit the subject of the story and help support the main point. Because being funny for the sake of being funny is ineffective in learning. Okay, element number 4, focus. Stay on task. Stories are about keeping the listener's attention and driving the message. Omit details that don't develop the characters, or they move the story forward, or even tie to the main point. For example, if I was saying he was coming home from his daughter's house. On the way home, he stopped off at the grocery store and bought eggs, milk, crackers, and cookies. Oh, and the cookies were chocolate chip with raisins in them. Now, unless the description of the cookies has something to do with the main point, it's wasting words. Now, element number 5, timing. Keep your stories as short as possible while still conveying all of the main points. A long story stops being effective the moment listeners lose interest and disengage. And then 6 is suspense. As you deliver your story, incorporate anticipation lines to create tension and suspense with your audience. Make them wonder what's going to happen next. Anticipation lines can be created with a combination of words such as, and just when I thought, or with vocal variety such as a long pause or silence, and with body language such as a simple grin or a smile. Now, number 7 is surprise. Now, it's not always applicable, but when it is, it's a great thing to see a listener all of a sudden get it. You know, that aha moment. Same as with suspense and or drama, use your voice, your body, and your face to build that surprise. So there you have them, the 7 elements to include for effective delivery of stories. Now, what happens if you don't have all 7 of these in place? Will the story fail? Not necessarily, but the more of the 7 you use, the better your chances of success are. Now that we've explored the key elements to include in delivering effective stories, let's practice and see how all these work together. Will that be all right? All right. I'm going to model a story for you. Then we're going to chat a little bit about the key elements you heard and or saw. Now let me set the stage here. For the purposes of this story, let's say we've been going through class and some content about entrepreneurship and or partnership in business. Now, this is a story that was adapted from the book Simply Rich by Rich DeVos. Here we go. The streetcar rumbled to a stop at the end of my street. I was attending a school that was 2 miles from my house, and occasionally the streetcar conductor would see me with a wool coat, my collar up, hat pulled down, and black galoshes sinking in the snow, and give me a free lift to school. He must have noticed that I was walking much further to school than most students, and knew that the walk lightly felt even longer, facing into the wind and all the falling snow. I sometimes took a city bus, but the route wound through downtown and made several stops before arriving at my high school. So allowing the extra time for the long bus ride to school meant rising long before the sun. I needed more efficient transportation. I had noticed a 1929 Ford convertible going by several times on the street nearby my home. I started noticing this same car in the parking lot of my high school. I thought a ride in this car would surely beat the bus, the streetcar, or walking. So one day at school, I introduced myself to my fellow student who was the owner of the car. I told him I lived just a couple of blocks from him and asked if I might be able to catch rides with him to school. He was an enterprising type and said to me, "Well, why don't you give me 25 cents a week to help pay for the gas?" Well, gas was about 10 cents a gallon in those days, so I agreed to the deal, not yet realizing that he was already charging other students the same amount a week for rides. That was my first formal business arrangement with Jay Van Andel, who became my lifelong friend and my business partner. So now that you've heard the story, let's look again at the 7 elements and determine whether they were incorporated. Drama. Was it there? Did I build the characters enough? Relevance. Was there relevance to the content? Humor. This might or might not have been here since it was more of a serious story, but there still might have been some. Focus. Was I focused on the delivery and building toward the point? What about timing? How was my timing? Too fast? Too slow? Suspense. Did I build some? And then finally, surprise. Did the point surprise you? Well, before we go any further, let's give you some final tips for your delivery. Make sure the story has a point connected to the topic being discussed. Otherwise, it's just entertainment. Create a vivid story by incorporating vocal variety and body language. And critically observe how movie makers, television directors, novelists, master storytellers, and great speakers craft their stories. How do they use elements from the hero's journey? How do they build tension? How do they draw you into the space of the story? And then finally, and maybe even more important, practice your storytelling skills on family members, friends, and peers before you deliver your participants. It's important to ask them for feedback, areas where you could have done more or less to drive the story. Well, there you have it. In this video, we learned 7 key elements to include in delivering effective stories: drama, relevance, humor, focus, timing, suspense, and surprise. We observed an effective story being told, and we explored some general tips to remember for your deliveries. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this video session. Don't forget to download the resources available for this particular video and make sure that you complete the activities. They're designed to help you put your newfound knowledge into action. We look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, good luck and good storytelling.